great about that. Okay, we're starting with those giggles we just had. Welcome to episode 1 of the Queer Divorce Club. I'm Tera. We're going to get to know each other a lot through this episode and in the future, but I'm excited to start off the podcast with an interview with my partner, Carly, here. Say hi, Carly.
Hi, everybody.
Not hi, Carly.
Right.
Yeah, you did good.
I did that before.
So I wanted to start off the podcast with Carly here to interview me, actually, to talk about how I started the Queer Divorce Club and the process I had for going through my divorce and where I'm at today. I wanted to share that with everybody, and I thought you'd be the best person to do that with.
Thank
I'm
you.
Excited.
I'm honored. I'm really excited for you.
I'm excited too. Let's do it.
Okay. So I think we should start by having you tell us about, give us some background about your divorce and where you are today.
Okay. So I was married for 13 years to, you know all of this, so I'm just telling you repetitively, but here we go.
Well, you're not telling me, you're telling them.
That's true. I'm telling everybody else. Okay. I was married for 13 years. I got married when I was 24 to my ex-husband. We had 2 kids who are now 12 and 7. We were married for a total of 13 years. I already said that. So I'm going to stop for a second. Okay. We got married pretty much right out of college, and we lived this typical normal life. We had our 2 kids. We bought, I think we owned like 3 houses together. We we both worked full-time jobs. I was busy all the time, doing all the things. Around the time that I had my youngest kiddo, Theo, my ex-husband had a mental health crisis that kind of threw us for a loop in our relationship, and put us in this space where we both had to seek some better mental health support and connection with each other. And during that time, I also started seeking out other community, and that gave me an opportunity to start understanding what I wanted with my life. And a lot of that was, a big part of that was realizing that I was a queer woman during that time. And it was probably, I think, around the time that our youngest was born. So around 6 or 7 years ago, I realized that. And I talked to my ex-husband about it. He was actually pretty understanding of that, and we opened up our marriage to try to understand, so I could understand, you know, what my sexuality was, what I needed, what it would be like to date women. But we'd really also tried to stay married for a long time as part of that, and it ended up being way too difficult. We got into toxic patterns that not only were because I was a queer woman, but because of some of the patterns we already had before, and stuff just became more accentuated and difficult. And over time, I realized that was not going to serve me for forever. Once I met you, and through friends, I realized that there was this other connection I could have with women, especially as I was dating them. I realized that connection was different. And then once we met, I realized that there was other ways to have relationships, and it just showed me how toxic my marriage was over time. And that was, I don't know if that was either my fault or my ex-husband's fault. I think we were just in these really bad patterns, and we kept doing the same thing over and over and over. And now, 2 years ago, I decided that I was done. I could tell the whole story about how that happened. It's this epic story I'll tell sometime about a fence and a smoker. But that's not, don't worry, nobody was throwing things. It was just buying one or the other. But that day, I kind of just realized that our patterns weren't going to change, and I needed to do something else. And I finally had that conversation with him that we needed to be done. And that was really difficult, and we tried living together for a while and all the things that led up to today. And we're now a year out from our divorce, and you and I are living together with our 3 kiddos. Yeah. We're like fully on the other side of it. I mean, things change every day. Right. But on the other side of the actual divorce part, it feels like.
Yeah. Can you describe the process you went through for your divorce? Who decided on the divorce, and how did the uncoupling process go for you?
Sure. So I was the one that ultimately said it's time to get divorced. I was at a spot where I couldn't do it anymore. I felt very stuck and very held back, and I knew it was time. We started out trying to figure out the mechanics of the divorce on our own and working through that. Because of the emotions that were really high during that time, that became practically impossible for us to do. And my ex-husband actually first got an attorney, and at first I was like, no, we can do this together, but having an attorney helped us out so much, because we both were able to have somebody on our side and just kind of walk through the mechanics of it without emotion, and that really helped us get through the process. So we finished it off by using attorneys and finalizing our divorce that way.
Yeah. How about the uncoupling process? What was that like?
So the day that I told him that I wanted to get divorced, we started to. He knew it was coming. I think we both knew we were at the end, but neither of us wanted to end it the whole time. It felt like it takes a lot of courage to be like, okay, now it's time. After so long of being together, you're like, we grew up together. We have 2 kids. We've lived down 4 houses, and we have puppies, and all these things that we've done together, and we're in this space. Like, it feels really courageous to break that. And I finally felt like I don't know, the moment I told him, I was like, took the breath out of me. Like, this doesn't feel courageous at all. This feels terrifying. It's like I turned from courage to terror instantly. And then we just started muddling through it. And we lived together for a little while in separate rooms, and we slowly started telling the kids. And then it was too emotional for us to live together during that process. So I moved out. And then now I feel like after we went through the legal process, we're at a point now, a year out, where we could even start thinking about, like, what should our relationship look like? And how is he involved in the kids' lives? And we do holidays and stuff together, as you know. And I think doing those little things and seeing each other over time has helped us figure out, starting to like dabble in what a co-parenting relationship is actually going to look like for real once we move forward from now.
Right. It takes time. There's lots of evolutions of that. Especially in the beginning.
Right. You don't always know what's supposed to be at first, or what it's going to feel like.
No. So you talked a little bit about the uncoupling process and like strategically how you separated, but what big emotions came up for you throughout the process of uncoupling, but also the process of divorce, and how did you support yourself through those big emotions?
I feel like I had the gamut of emotions, but I didn't always know what they were for a lot of the time. Like, I feel like at the beginning, I just kept feeling this like ball of stress. Like, I felt like I kept everything on my chest like the entire time. Like, I couldn't breathe, or I just like clenched my jaw constantly. That's all the time. And I think that was the first process of grief, I feel like. And all of the emotions that we've gone through now throughout the entire divorce was related to to that grief and that disconnection from this relationship that I had for a really long time. And I think sometimes I'm surprised by how, like, I'm like, oh, I don't, like, I think about my past life a lot now, but then I'm like, move past it in this space where, oh, it feels really good sometimes. I'm in this space where, like, oh, everything's really has moved past it. But then all of a sudden I'll be like, dang, why did that hit me and make me so sad? It would just be like this random thing that happened with the kids or whatever. And I think at first everything just felt really hard and really sad, and I was exhausted all the time and making the change and pushing through. And now it feels a lot less like that. But I still do have moments of grief. It kind of like the grief dissipates over time, but it still exists. I think the emotions that I had came from the grief, and now that I'm talking about it, the needing to do things for myself and making choices for myself. And I think that was the hardest part for me, was knowing that I can make something move for myself. And I've done so many things, like built businesses and done other podcasts and like started nonprofits, and I can do all of that stuff, but making the decision and putting myself out there as making a huge life decision for myself without a partner, like that was just my choice, felt like the hardest thing I could ever do. And I fought that for a long time, but I felt really brave through it too. It's like every time I made a choice, I felt even braver and moved forward, and then started getting more confident with how I talked to the kids about it and how we connected around it. And so over time, I was able to trust myself more, but I feel like the grief of losing the relationship and trusting myself were the most emotional and intense parts for me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. How did you tell your kids about being queer and your divorce? And what were some things that were important to you during that process for your kids? And what do you believe you could have done better?
I feel like there's so many things. Look back, I feel like I could have done better. But I think now that I look back at what happened and the process that I went through, the times that I connected most with my kids were the times that I was the most honest with them about how I was feeling at a developmental level. So my youngest was 5 when we started the divorce process, and I think he didn't understand it at a level that the 12-year-old, he was 10 at the time, understood it. And I think the 5-year-old knew that it was emotional. He missed, like when he first started living apart, he missed his dad a lot, and was sad that one of us wasn't there. He was scared that the other one would get hurt or something when we were gone. So he was having emotions around that part and around the shifting, but less about the fact that I was a queer woman or the fact that we weren't going to be married forever. It was like a different dynamic for him developmentally around that. But then the 10-year-old, he and I have always had this relationship where we talk closely about everything. He asks a lot of really curious questions about things, and I came out to him a while ago. He knew that I explained to him, I think a few years before we got divorced, that I was bisexual, which now I would probably consider, I call myself queer because I would say I would maybe more pansexual or lesbian leaning, who knows, it may shift over time, but I explained to him that I was bisexual a while ago when we were married and kind of talked to him about that, and so he knew that I was queer before we came out. But as we got divorced, even today, he was asking me questions about, like, I was telling him about the podcast, and he's like, what does it mean to be queer, and what does that mean for you? And how does that, he's curious about what that means for me as a person and who I am at a different way than the 7-year-old is now. And so I'm just more honest with him now about, like, this is how I feel, and this is why I did that, and this is why, being myself is so important, and this is why I chose this for us. And I feel like over time, the more I talk to him in that way, he feels a lot better.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like.
I really love that about the relationship that you've built with him. And I loved today when he shared that they had field day at school, mm-hmm. and they were playing tug of war, and it was boys versus girls. Mm-hmm. And you said, what about the non-binary kids? Mm-hmm. And he said, Mom, that's why I can't tell you anything. Because he knows you're always going to tell him the truth. Yeah. He knows you're always going to challenge him. Mm-hmm. And he respects you for it. And he loves that mm-hmm. about you and about your relationship. Yeah. It's really beautiful.
I'm thinking back to you and I and him were sitting up late one night, and he was just up late and driving his hoverboard around the kitchen. Remember when he was like finally started to ask me about it? What did it feel to be gay or decide you're gay? How'd you know that? How'd you come to that decision? Why does that mean you can't be married? Like, he was directly asking me all those questions. Mm-hmm. I was like, keeping me on my toes. Like, I gotta know these answers. But I guess I keep him on his toes, so he gives it back to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
He's curious and he trusts you.
He is.
One of the biggest parts of your divorce journey is that we came out publicly as queer women in a queer relationship to family, friends, and the world after the divorce, during the divorce.
Yeah.
What did that process look like for you?
That was hard. And good.
Yeah.
I feel like like I was saying earlier, like trusting
Still
myself
going.
and owning myself. Yeah, we come out every day.
Yeah.
I feel like I come out all the time to people in various ways. It surprises me how much we have to come out regularly, like to different parents and to different things at kids' schools and like all that stuff. And I think one of the things too, just on this coming out thing, is people don't understand when, because we often like we go to school and it's you and me and ex-husband at school, like at a parent-teacher conference, and you can see the teacher feels like awkward or weird about it, and we're like, we're here together, trying to be here together. And so I think we're coming out in that way too, or you'll see like I'm with my kid's dad at school and then I'm with you, and then people are confused about it.
Right.
You don't have to know everything, people. Just
Right.
be confused, but everybody asks. Yeah. So I say, I was saying too that the trusting myself and realizing my queerness and owning that was a huge, huge part of after getting divorced. And now, even doing this podcast, it took me a while to even be like, I'm queer enough to do a queer divorce club podcast. Like owning that in myself has been really huge. And I think that it seems like you and I have been able to go through that process a little bit together and support each other and figure out, it feels like now we kind of have to define ourselves, but we don't, I don't know. I want to be me and not a definition, but it's hard to find that place because you have to explain it to everybody.
Right.
Yeah. And have this whole other relationship with like my dad's side of my family that we haven't really met. And so we have to kind of come out to them. Although we did send them Christmas cards with both of us on it. So or New Year's cards. New Year's cards. So that's kind of how I think we got to the point. I know I got to a point where I was like, I've come out to enough people that were close enough to me that mattered the most. The people that we need to have in our circle, close friends, starting to build our community, coming out at work, those close things for us. And then finally I was just like, F it. We're telling everybody that we're together, because why not? Why wouldn't we? It's like if we were just a blended family and in a heteronormative space, we would have sent out New Year's cards together. So I was like, we're doing it. And we sent out a letter with explaining our family and who all the members of it are. And we just did it to all the extended family members.
Yeah.
A few people said stuff to us about it, and really we created a family name and they called us by the family name, and we did that kind of stuff, but a lot of people didn't say anything, so I don't know what that means.
Maybe they just accepted it.
Yeah, they just accepted it. That's what I'm gonna think in my mind.
What has been helpful to you as you're coming out, and what have been some ways that it's been easier over time?
I think the most important thing has been finding other people who are queer and talking to them about their coming out process, about who they are, seeing them as regular human beings, being in a community and building up our space that has more queer people around us. I think seeing other blended families, other families that, all queer families really are not traditional, because it depends on, how they can make a baby, but really outside of that, like, what's that what creates a traditional marriage? Like, we can, man, woman, they can make a baby together, adopt a baby. Every queer relationship, at least we know, is blended in some way. Kids are adopted, kids are stepkids, whatever it is. And building up that community over time has really helped me be like, I'm normal, I feel normal, it's okay. Kind of taking out some of that socialized homophobia in my own mind around myself. I think that's been the biggest thing. And therapy on the other side of that has been very important to me. I have a really good therapist that I trust and feel really good about, and she's helped me walk through that journey too.
Yeah. I feel like that leads really well into talking about why you started the Queer Divorce Club and how it's evolving. Can you share about that?
Yeah, for sure. So the Queer Divorce Club started as a kind of a joke between you and me and one of our other friends that has also getting divorced at the same exact time and is a queer woman. And we were like, Queer Divorce Club, yay, we've done it. And over time, it's been like adding people to it.
It's been wild.
Yeah, it has.
We're just sitting around and we're like, hey, wait a minute. We're all part of the Queer Divorce Club.
I love that so much. I love it. And I feel so good when we're in spaces where everybody has been queer and divorced. I don't know. It's like this midlife thing.
There's so many different layers, though, to
there
it
is.
that are unique and also shared.
Yes. Yeah. And we can and I think the nice thing about building up that group, and I have seen over time with our friends who are queer and divorced, and we have quite a few of them now, as you were just saying, is that we can see that they all go through hard times and they've all been through the really difficult process of coming out, of getting divorced, of changing the life for their kids. And all of them on the other side are here talking and laughing about it, right? Like we had friends that sent us their divorce papers so we could see exactly what to do. We had, people that sat down with us to walk through how they structured their kid time, how they talked to their exes, how, all of these things that we worked out over time. Having other people who have been through that felt so good, like scaffolded for us. It wasn't this like this black hole of randomness we were like walking down with no direction.
Right.
And having the Queer Divorce Club really, I mean, it wasn't formal until now. Of course, I have to make everything a club, really formal club. I can't handle it. I need a button for it. I haven't made buttons. Well, I designed buttons. I haven't put them out there yet, but I need a button. So I'm putting a button on it and putting it out in the world. But I also feel like what we got out of that community and the connection we got from each other and all the resources we had, I want everybody to be able to access and connect to. And I think it's really important to have that.
Having a specific support line would have been that was our lifeline.
Yeah, it was.
You want to grow it and offer resources to others.
Yeah, and we didn't have, I think one of the things that makes it a queer divorce different than a heteronormative divorce is that nobody in our family's gone through it. Like my mom's divorced, my dad's divorced, obviously they're together. My dad's been divorced twice. We have friends who are divorced, but it's so different going through it and then coming out after. But I think also if you're in a queer relationship already and then you get divorced, there's also that huge difference of like people second guess you. You weren't really queer. You can't stay in a marriage. Marriage doesn't work. This is kind of this all like queer divorce is a new thing for our society overall, and it is different. There's a lot of different emotions that come with it. There's not as much family support that goes with it. There's, people, I feel like, I don't know if it's because I'm this strong woman, but a lot of people were like, you're getting divorced and you're choosing that you're queer and you're coming out. That means you know exactly what you want and exactly what you need to do and exactly, where you're going in your life and you don't need any support. And I'm like, fuck that. Yes, I do. Like, I'm like so lost and so scared and so confused. And everybody, for some reason, the view was that I just knew exactly what I wanted and I was okay and I was going to be fine. I was like, why? I need to switch the idea of that. I feel like over time I'm working on, especially like conversations with my mom and saying, like, I'm really having a hard time here. I need your help. But asking for help is something I've had to learn over time. And having friends in my queer community has helped that a lot. Yeah. Asking for help and supporting each other and asking for help and getting what we need and supporting each other when we don't have family that's supporting us, that sort of stuff. Do you think, can I ask you what you feel like the Queer Divorce Clubs helped you, or what it, when we first started to build it, and how you felt about that?
Yeah, I feel like I felt really alone before that.
Mm-hmm.
And then even just like sitting down with our friend that one time when we coined it at that moment as just oh, hey, look at us.
Mm-hmm.
We're the Queer Divorce Club. It was like instant community, an instant. It wasn't just us going through this,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's 3 of us sitting here, there's others who have experienced something along these lines, or at least a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it just felt very affirming and helpful.
Yeah, I love it. Everybody should be in the Queer Divorce Club. Well, everybody who's queer and divorced should be in the Queer Divorce Club.
If you're queer and divorced,
you are welcome.
Yes.
Yes. I think one of the things that...
Or if you're not divorced and you're queer,
mm-hmm.
you're thinking about divorce.
Yeah.
Or if you're divorced but not sure you're queer.
Yeah.
Any along the lines of that spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. I think that one of the things that when we started talking about it too, publicly or with our friends in our community, open about sharing, like, oh, you're divorced and you're queer, other people come out of the woodwork and they're like, I'm queer and I think I'm getting divorced. What should I do? I don't know why these people have all high-pitched little voices, but they do. They all have.
Everybody on the internet talks like that.
They
Didn't
do.
You know
They're
that?
like, Data!
Yeah.
Do you help me figure this out? But it's funny because we run into people and they do start asking, and I feel like showing up and showing out like that we're divorced and we're okay, as hard as it was, and talking about the hard, and it just makes me feel better and makes everybody else feel like they can connect with it. And
I like that. Showing up, showing out.
Mm-hmm.
Did you make that up?
Just
Did you
now,
hear
right
it from
off the
someone?
No.
I like it.
Maybe. Who
show
knows?
up, show out.
Somebody's going to Google it and be like, Tara, you got it from this from a while
You
ago.
better copyright that now.
I better hurry up.
It's the next torn tank top.
My unicorn guts t-shirt isn't enough.
No, we need to show up, show out.
Show up, show out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's going to be in the merch now. Watch out, people.
All right. So one more question, Tara. What do you think is the most important thing for your listeners to keep in mind throughout their divorce and as they are rebuilding?
So I've been thinking about this question quite a bit in different iterations of what I might say on the podcast. It feels like I have to say this epic thing, but when it comes down to it, as I have explored what I think is the most important thing, I keep coming back to trusting myself and trusting yourself throughout the process, and finding a way to understand and trust your intuition throughout that. And I think that there's many times throughout the process where I could be like, there's 2 roads I can go. I can stay living with my ex-husband right now and figure out how to do this, or I can move out. And, you know, as hard as it was to move out and move the kids out and make that decision, even when I was thinking about living still with my ex-husband, I was like feeling so unsettled about it. You know, the heaviness on my chest, the teeth grinding, like now even as I talk about it, I can feel that feeling in my chest. But then I'm like, moving out, it feels like this lightness all of a sudden. Even if I just say that out loud, it's wild once I started to try to trust my body and to feel those feelings inside. And then as I started trusting myself, as hard as those choices were, I kept being able to do that more. So over time, I was able to build up the courage I needed and the information I needed to make the right decisions. And I cried a lot. That doesn't mean that it was easy. I spent so many times crying in like black holes, like sitting in the dark in my room, like in a ball or on the couch. You witnessed many times where we're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm stuck in this spot. Mm-hmm. And then I would let the emotion out, trust that I'm heading in the right direction, and try again the next day. And I feel like the times where that used to happen a lot, and now it's like spreading out over time. It gets easier and easier, and sometimes it's still difficult and things pop up like I was talking about earlier, but the more I trust myself, the more I begin to understand how my intuition is and how the emotions work in my body, the better I feel over time, and that I'm making the right choice and heading in the right direction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can I add to that a little bit?
Yeah.
I feel like if you're not at a place yet where you are fully trusting yourself, I feel like asking for help to trust yourself is also okay. Mm-hmm. But you got to ask the people who are going to affirm to trust yourself, right? Don't ask them, should I get divorced?
Right.
In your heart what you need.
Mm-hmm. Ask
people to affirm that feeling that you're not quite sure that you have.
To affirm that you know what you need.
Yes.
Inside.
Yeah.
You have the answer.
Affirm.
Yeah.
Affirm to trust yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's really good. I think there is that space when you're learning to trust yourself for the first time that you need somebody to be like, no, it's okay. You got it. You got the answer. You know what you're doing. Yeah. For me, it was my therapist, or, we do that for each other sometimes, or a close friend. It's a very important. Yeah. Those people to, not make the decision for you, but tell you you're doing it.
I think trust yourself is pretty powerful. So I think that is a pretty epic thing. Trust yourself, show up, show out.
It's hard.
You got all kinds of mantras for merch now.
Yes, perfect. Why is, for real though, I don't know. Maybe it's because we're women. Maybe it's because I grew up a people pleaser. Maybe it's because I can think of all these reasons why I didn't trust myself and lost my intuition, but it feels so fucking hard to do at first. Like, it does. It feels so hard.
Yeah, it does, because you're choosing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're choosing, I mean, there's a lot of people who value being convenient as a character trait.
Yeah.
And so busting through some of those patterns and how you grew up. Not everybody is like us.
Right.
Some people do trust themselves.
I know.
Really easily.
Where are you?
We need to meet them.
Where are you people that trust yourself? You come.
There's a whole episode.
Yes.
There you go. There's an episode. Find someone who trusts themselves. And who thinks that this part of this episode is ridiculous.
Right. Well, I hope that they weren't born that way, right, though? Is there somebody that was born that way?
I don't know. Ask Lady Gaga.
That's true. Maybe Lady Gaga. No, she talks about how she hasn't trusted herself.
Doesn't she have a song called Born This Way?
She absolutely does. Okay. Yeah, for sure. But but I was just thinking maybe she does trust herself, but I don't even think she does.
I don't know. I
think about all these famous people that, like, Oprah talks about not trusting herself or being in that spot where she had to figure it out for a while. And I don't know. Oprah's like the one. If she doesn't, then who does?
I feel like if you know that you trust yourself, you had to at one point not know that about yourself.
That's
so it was
true.
like you had to have this aha.
Yeah.
At some point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna cough. Okay. Sorry.
Take a drink. You're right. At some point, there has to be a moment where you're like, I do trust myself now. Yeah. Okay. We're seeking you out, people who are more confident than Oprah was when she first set it up.
Why you gotta start there? That bar is so high. How about you just start with you?
If you trust yourself now, come and tell us how to do it.
There you go.
How to do it.
Yeah.
I feel like, though, I am moving towards a space where I trust myself more and more. But I definitely consistently question myself on a regular basis. But the more I'm like, okay, that question was just an anxiety or just a worry or just an emotion I shouldn't say just, but it was an emotion connected to it, something that triggered you or whatever, then I can start piecing apart, like the actual trust and intuition versus anxiety and grief and whatever other emotion is in there. Mm-hmm.
I think this is a great start to your podcast.
I think so.
I'm
Thank
excited
you for helping me start it.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Uh-oh, we have a cat knocking at the door. So we better end the podcast there. We're going to end with that on there. We're going to keep it. Okay. Thank you so much, Carly, for starting the podcast out with me.
I love
you.